Ifa is not a religion. It isn't history. It's not philosophy or science. And yet it contains all of them. For generations, Ifa has been reduced, dismissed, and misunderstood, often labeled simply as African religion. But scholars, clerics, and even modern scientists have begun to acknowledge something profound. Ifa is a complete system of knowledge, one that predates modern philosophy, modern science, and even modern mathematics. Today, in this video, I'm going to explore and share what Ifa really is, why it was misunderstood, and why modern science is only now catching up to the ideas preserved in Ifa for thousands of years. There's a popular notion that Ifa is merely a religion practiced by certain African people, but evidence shows that this idea is deeply misleading. One of the earliest scholars to challenge this view was Professor Wande Abimbola, who, in his academic writings like Ifa, an exposition of Ifa literary corpus, which I'll leave a link to in the description of this video, stated clearly that Ifa contains history, nature study, and structured knowledge systems. Another voice added powerful clarity to this. Patriarch D. Olarinwa Ekpega, a Methodist cleric from Nigeria, in 1987, during a lecture at the University of Ibadan, made a statement that fundamentally reframed how we understand Ifa. He said, and I quote, "Ifa is not religion, but it contains religion. Ifa is not history, but it contains history. Ifa is not philosophy, but it contains philosophy. Ifa is not science, but it contains science, and a very profound kind of science." That statement alone demands that we rethink everything that we think we know about Ifa. When we hear the word science, we usually think of chemistry, biology, or physics. But science is not just lab experiments. At its core, science is a systematic way of understanding reality. And Ifa does exactly that. To test whether these claims are true, we must do one thing: enter the world of Ifa itself and do an in-depth study. Because Ifa doesn't hide its principles. They are encoded in its structure, language, and oral literature. One of the most striking discoveries in Ifa is its use of binary logic. Ifa clearly states that the unit of counting must be two: positive and negative, light and dark, up and down. But here's where Ifa differs from Western philosophy. In Western thought, opposites are treated as separate and opposing forces, often unable to coexist. In Ifa, they are inseparable. Think of your hand, for example. It has two sides. Can you remove one side and still have a hand? Think of a coin. Heads and tails. Can one exist without the other? The answer is no. This is the foundation of Ifa's worldview. Reality exists as complementary duality, not conflict. According to Professor Sophie Oluwole, author of the book Socrates and Orunmila, two patron saints of classical philosophy, Ifa teaches that nothing can be defined in isolation. A mountain only makes sense because a valley exists. You cannot describe up without down. You cannot describe light without dark. Western materialism often tries to isolate concepts to define things independently. Ifa says that is impossible. Meaning only exists through relationship. In the West, the idea of materialism became the dominant school of thought. The simple idea that if something is real, it must be measurable through the five senses: touch, taste, sight, smell, and sound. Anything else, spirit, consciousness, is often dismissed as unreal. But Ifa challenges this contradiction. If reality is made up of inseparable opposites, how can one half be declared real and the other half imaginary? You cannot logically say matter exists but spirit does not, when both arise together. Here's where things get interesting though. Modern physics, especially particle physics, has begun to acknowledge this dual reality. Particles behave as both matter and energy, both presence and probability. Binary logic now underpins computing, information theory, and quantum science. And scholars like Frank D. Smith Jr. of Cartersville, USA, have pointed out something remarkable. Ifa's Odù system is a clear expression of binary mathematics long before the West formalized it. What Western science is discovering, Ifa has preserved for thousands of years. Ifa was never fragmented into disciplines. It wasn't separated into religion, science, philosophy, or politics. It was kept whole, just like ancient Greek philosophy before the Middle Ages, where one thinker studied maths, politics, ethics, astronomy, and nature together. Only later did Western knowledge break these into isolated fields. Ifa remained unified. And that's why we can find mathematics, physics, biology, ethics, cosmology, psychology, all encoded within its verses and oral traditions. This isn't speculation. The evidence lies in Ifa's oral literature. If you study the Odù Ifá verses deeply and carefully, you find structured observations of nature, human behavior, cause and effect, and cosmic order. Ifa is not belief-based knowledge. It is experiential knowledge, preserved through memory, language, and ritual. So, what is Ifa? It is not merely a religion. It is not superstition. It's not mythology. Ifa is a living archive of African knowledge, a system that refused to separate the world into artificial categories. And as modern science starts to circle back toward unity, duality, interconnectedness, it becomes clear Ifa was never behind. It was never primitive. The world simply wasn't ready for it. If you've enjoyed watching this video, I kindly and humbly ask that you consider subscribing to the channel. Also, hit that like button and consider commenting and sharing your reflections in the comments. Also, feel free to share the video with your network and also check out some of my other content and videos on my page. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.